Hey everybody, my name is Kayla, and this is Dark Tales from the Road. Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here for episode 28. We are going to be exploring the Riddle House at Yesteryear Village in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm really excited about this one. It is super creepy. I think it's going to be awesome. No new updates here. I don't think so. It's cold and snowy, and I love it. I'd rather be it cold and snowy than hot. I do not like the heat at all. Anyways, I believe that's going to be it for right now. And a quick reminder to follow me on Instagram at darktalesfromtheroad. I have a Twitter, darktalesfr. Sorry, I don't know why I can't remember that one. I have a Facebook group, Dark Tales from the Road podcast. I have a YouTube and a TikTok at Dark Tales from the Road. So go ahead and subscribe to those guys. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. Yeah, and I also have an email, darktalesfromtheroad@gmail.com. If you guys would like to send me an email, I'm all for listener stories or suggestions on certain things. I get them randomly from people and I love it. Like my friend suggested fairies yesterday, which I'm all for. It's definitely more of a European thing, but once I get done with all 50 states, I am going to be starting to jump around internationally, which I'm really excited. I'm like itching to do so many different things, but yeah. And if you would like to support the show, I have a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee. There's lots of different perks on there. You get the episodes a day early, you get a sticker, and I am starting bonus episodes. My first couple ones I am going to put on the normal apps like Spotify and Apple and all those just to get going. And then once, I get more members, I'm probably going to just switch those to just on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. But yeah, please go on and look. There's a lot of cool things on there, and every cent goes directly back into the podcast, and it just helps me with technology, websites. Yeah, and thank you to everyone who already supports me on those pages. It means a lot. You have no idea. And thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. It means a lot to me. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're new here, I usually do a little bit of history about the state that it is in and the city that it is in before I get into the main subject. Just a little background of where we're coming from, where we're traveling, because it's Dark Tales from the Road. So we're on the road in West Palm Beach, Florida. I've never been there. I don't even know if I've heard that said before. I don't know. But it has some really cool history, and so does West Palm Beach in Florida. So I'm going to start with Florida right now. So Florida's history is very, very long. There's a lot that happened in Florida, and I guess I didn't think about it, how it started and everything. It's just, I don't know a lot about Florida. I've only been there a couple times when I was younger. So it was very interesting to be able to look at their history from a different point of view, So Native Americans were the first that inhabited the peninsula of Florida, and that was about 14,000 years ago. Like, my mind can't even comprehend something like that. Some of the early arrivals into Florida were the Europeans and a lot of Spanish. There's a certain explorer named Juan Ponce de Leon, which I know that name. I remember that one from history class. And he came in 1513 and started, written records about the area. It actually received its name from a conquistador, and he called it the Peninsula of La Pascua Florida. I always said that right. And it was a lot to do with the landscape of the area, and they actually came during Easter season. And so they called it Pascua Floridia for Festival of Flowers. It was the first part of the United States to be settled by Europeans, and they say in 1513, when Juan Ponce de Leon came in, it marked the beginning of the American frontier. Pretty cool. So since that time, Florida has many waves of colonization and a ton of immigration from people in France and Spain in like the 16th century. And Native American groups also started to migrate from other places in the South into Florida. And a lot of freed black slaves and fugitive slaves came to Florida in like the 19th century. And they became allies with the Native Americans, and they were called the Black Seminoles. And the name comes from a Spanish word called cimarron, or wild runaway. So that's what they called the Native Americans and the slaves that were there. So going on that, then this became a war zone. Like, it was called the Seminole Wars, and the Americas are trying to expand their territory, and they are taking over Spain's land in Florida. It's a very fertile area. They just know it's going to be hugely prosperous, and they promised freedom for escaped slaves. So the Seminole Wars began in 1812 when the American militias attacked the Spanish people there and tried to take back all the lands that were occupied by the Spanish. In 1817, the government actually officially invaded Florida. And then in 1819, Spain decided to give Florida to the United States, and that was the Florida Purchase Treaty. And as a part of the treaty, the United States actually paid Spain $5 million for damages incurred. And today's money, it's about $117 million. So with all of the Native Americans and indigenous people there, including the Seminoles, so the Native Americans and the black slaves that were free or escaped, they wanted to get them out of the state of Florida. And they, were pushing them into Oklahoma and Arkansas. And actually, President Andrew Jackson, I can't talk today, signed an Indian Removal Act in 1930. And actually, Andrew Jackson was the president at the time, and he signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. And this forced the indigenous Native Americans and the Seminoles east to get out. And they were kind of pushing them towards Mississippi and then into Oklahoma. And that was known as the Trail of Tears. And a lot of the Seminoles, they refused to leave. And in 1835, they actually attacked American troops that were in Florida. And there were 7 years of battles between the two sides. And then in the end, 30,000 Seminoles were forced out of Florida. So there was actually another phase of the war that broke out in 1855. The Seminoles again attacked U.S. troops because they were sending people into their territory. 3 years later, the war ended with a treaty giving the land to the Seminoles in Oklahoma. They still had to leave Florida and go to Oklahoma. And any of the remaining Seminoles in Florida were moved to Oklahoma, and there were actually about 300 people that still remained in Florida. They are now known as, quote, unconquered people, and they are now federally recognized tribes, and they are the Seminole tribe of Florida and the Mixucky drive. Wow, I'm so sorry. Florida. And then it says both of which belong to the Creek Confederacy. So Florida became a territory of the U.S. in 1821, and then in 1845 is when they were admitted to the Union as the 27th state. During the Civil War in the 1800s, a lot of their economy was based on crops, cattle, and enslaved people. And this, obviously they were against the northern states because they opposed slavery. And in 1861, Florida actually seceded from the Union. They were the third state to do it. And then, 6 other states joined to form the Confederate States of America, and that's what incited the Civil War. So most people in Florida fought for the Confederacy, and they supplied troops with food and all kinds of stuff like that, but they officially surrendered in 1865. They surrendered to the Union, and then were able to become an official state. So Florida is nicknamed the Sunshine State due to its warm climate and days of sunshine. And I just laugh because it reminds me of Dumb and Dumber, because I'm pretty sure when they go to Aspen in Colorado, and he's like, Colorado, the Sunshine State, which it could be. Colorado has more sunny days than like any other place, which is crazy, but it really does. It's very sunny there. But okay, I had to put that in there because it makes me laugh. So Florida is known for its climate, tons of beaches, and a lot of industry. Definitely, they have a lot of migrants and immigrants that come into Florida. And it became this huge boom in the 1920s because of it. Actually, in 2014, Florida had over 19 million people, and it actually surpassed New York, becoming the 3rd most populous state in the US. Again, the economy, it always continues to change, and their economy relied heavily on logging, mining, fishing, and sponge diving. That sounds fun, as well as cattle ranching, farming, and citrus. Also at that time, tourism was huge, real estate, banking, and then it became a huge retirement destination for not only people, but also businesses. So again, tourism is a huge part of Florida's economy. I think we all know that. It definitely started to become a vacation destination, and actually started in like the 1800s. Then in the 20th century, it became Florida's prime industry, and they were attracting literally millions of visitors. And that's when theme parks started to pop up all over Florida, including Walt Disney's resort. It opened in Orlando in 1971, and it is the world's largest and most visited recreational resort. And it spreads about 30,000 acres, which is the same size of San Francisco, which is insane. And it approximately attracts 46 million visitors annually. That's a lot of people. I want to take my kids so bad, but at the same time, I'm like not mentally prepared to go to Disney World, and it's a long flight, and I don't know if I want to try Disneyland. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Yeah. Anyways, and last here for Florida, obviously there is Florida's Cape Canaveral, which when it first was built in the 1940s, it was a missile testing site, and then it became a huge area for the U.S. space program in 1950. And, many well-known space flights have come out of there, like 1962, John Glenn became the first American in space, and he blasted off at Cape Canaveral, and then Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, and it is now known as the Kennedy Space Center, and it obviously is an active launch pad still. All right, so let's go into West Palm Beach. It is in the southeastern part of Florida. In the 1870s is when a lot of European settlers, non-Native American settlers, came to the West Palm Beach area, and they called it, quote, Lake Worth country. The population of the area was always pretty small until the 1890s, when a man named Henry Flagler came into town, and he started to construct hotels and resorts throughout the area to bring in more tourism. And he came in and also built a railroad starting in 1894. So West Palm Beach was supposed to be just a residential area for the workers at the different hotels. That's what Flagler intended for it. And it definitely changed through the times. In 1893, a man named George W. Potter came in and surveyed the land and plotted out 48 blocks of the city. And it became an incorporated city in 1894. And a lot changed through there. A lot more people are coming in, and it is building up like crazy. Sadly, in 1928, a hurricane hit and it completely destroyed the city. And it was, an end of an era because the land boom ended and they just went into severe economic decline because that was the onset of the Great Depression. But when it came to World War II, the economic rebound was huge for them. Industries starting back up, crops, cattle, all of that. It definitely got back into the swing of things. So West Palm Beach was actually incorporated 2 years before Miami was. And in 1895, they had 1,000 residents in it. And now the population is around 117 plus residents. Florida's first junior college was opened. It was Palm Beach Junior College in 1933. And there were a lot of soldiers that actually came through the West Palm Beach airport during World War II. And it said that a lot of those servicemen are who came back to live in West Palm Beach and populate it. So that's all I have for Florida and West Palm Beach. Now I would love to get started with the Riddle House and Yesteryear Village. First, I'm going to talk about Yesteryear Village. I had no clue this existed until I saw the Ghost Adventures episode about the Riddle House. I've always been kind of oddly interested in Yesteryear Village because of its crazy history, which I'm going to get into. But yeah, Zachy Baby, he turned me on. I said Zachy Baby in another episode and I got a message and it said, we are calling him Zachy Baby from now on. So I do love you, Zach. You'll never listen to this ever, but I've always liked you since you first started. I was in 2008 and I lived in California at the time, probably. But I had seen a bunch of his other things a lot later, like they went to another place. Now I can't remember it, and I just watched it the other day in 2004. So I was a junior in high school when that one came out. So I've always been watching you, Zach, but you're super hot. Okay, Zachy Baby. So that's kind of what turned me on. And then when I started doing some research on Florida, I just kept getting drawn back to it. And I wanted it to be just on Yesteryear Village, but the Riddle House on the property is very creepily, dangerously haunted. So I'm going to do both. So we're going to start with a little history about Yesteryear Village. On the property, there's an old school, a farm, a blacksmith shop, a general house, and several others. There's actually 30 buildings in total that make up this historic village. So it is located at the South Florida Fairgrounds. And at the fairgrounds, this is one of the more unique parts of the fairgrounds that you can go tour. They have events and tours in this section, and it is an array of houses that people from early Florida times lived in, worked in, stuff like that. And it's just a way to travel back in time and really see the history of Palm Beach County and, other places in the state of Florida. It is like a living museum. You can go into all of these places and look around and see all of the stuff that's in there. It sounds really, really cool. So it's known as a historic park on the fairgrounds, and it has artifacts in all of the buildings also, and they range from 1895 to 1945. That's the range for all of the places there. Here's some examples of what you can find there. There's a rural church from the 19th century. It was constructed in 1893, and it was a Baptist congregation. And in 1953, a new church was built at the spot that old one was at. So the Baptist church was disassembled and actually reconstructed at the Yesteryear Village. If you're familiar with sewing machines, a man named Paris Singer, who is the son of Isaac Singer invented this Singer sewing machine. They actually have a cabin there, and it's the sewing circle cabin. And in the cabin at the village, you can go in and you can see different textiles and early sewing machines. And this was a place that tourists and travelers could go in the 1900s to literally see all this stuff on display. And it was located in Riviera Beach. There's also a Southern Bell telephone exhibit to showcase Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone. And fun fact, Alexander Graham Bell actually did a lot to enhance communication for people who were deaf. And this building held more than 18 different patents in it for his inventions. So this exhibit is dedicated to the history of the telephone and everything that, Graham Bell did. And it's literally one of a kind. You get to explore how telephones were used, and it's a very old and rare property. It was built in 1931 and was eventually moved. Sorry. My dog has a cone on because he ripped his ear open, and he's like very needy right now, so he's right underneath my feet and the cone keeps hitting me. Anyways, it's very rare. It was built in 1931, and then it was moved to Yesteryear, where it was renovated by a group of volunteers from the Bell South Telephone Pioneers, which is pretty cool. Like, that's huge. Like, these last two houses are just huge in American history. Like, it's not just a bunch of houses that people lived in, these are literally living museums. It's really cool. Sorry if my dog is barking in the background. It's just us, so kids are at school. Anyways, there's also another exhibit called, quote, the Bink Gilson exhibit. It's a replica of the Hale Plantation House, which was in Alachua County. So it was built by Bink and Joan Gilson, and it houses inside of it a lot of historical objects, and it's, just like a small museum within a bigger museum type thing. And lastly here, so I couldn't find all 30 of the buildings, but this was the last building that they had mentioned. It was the Lokahatchee Groves Schoolhouse. It was built in 1953, and it was a rural Florida school. It had 2 rooms, and it was actually the first to be relocated to the village, and that was in 1990. And you really get to look into how education was at that time, and you will see how the schools were like in the 1930s and in the area of Lokahachi. I hope I said that right. But again, just a very cool old building to really see what school was like in a 2-room schoolhouse, So one of the famous houses there is who we're going to be talking about, and that is the Riddle House. So it's an old Edwardian house, and it was located in West Palm Beach, and it was built in 1905 by Henry Flagler. Good, I can't talk today. And again, he helped really build up West Palm Beach, and some of his hotel construction workers built the Riddle House. And they used leftover wood from the hotels to build this house. So it was originally located at 327 Acacia Street, sure, in West Palm Beach, and it was nicknamed the Painted Lady because it is painted bright colors. And it actually, the original spot is now like a football field or a field for a school or something like that. But it's right across the street from a graveyard. So it was originally known as the Gatekeeper's Cottage, and it was for the groundskeepers for the cemetery across the street, the Woodlawn Cemetery. It was also a mortuary and a funeral house at that time. So a lot of cemetery workers lived there, and it was city funded to try to take down grave robbing in the cemetery. It was very big back then, but it was more to get their possessions that they were buried with. I know there's a whole theory about grave robbering and taking the bodies to like doctors and stuff like that. But they specifically said grave robbing of the different items that they were buried with. So in 1920, a man named Carl Riddle bought the house, and he was actually the first city manager and superintendent of the public works of the city of West Palm Beach. He was actually recalled in 1923, and so he moved out of the house, and then it became a temporary resident for the new city employees. After that, in 1972, a woman named Mary Ann Hayes, she was an artist. She bought the house at auction for $21,000, and she converted it into an art school. And then Palm Beach Atlantic College, which is now Palm Beach Atlantic University, purchased the Riddle House in the 80s, and they actually used it as a dormitory for several years. I actually found on Reddit a gal that lived by it and actually went to that university, and she said that she had taken classes in there and knew people that lived in there, and that it is super haunted. So the house later was abandoned. It had gone into disrepair, and it was scheduled for demolition to help expand the college. So it's probably in the field at the college now that I say it was in a field at a high school. That's probably exactly where I'm thinking. So the college actually decided to donate the house to the nephew of Carl Riddle. They, between them, they worked it out. And his name is John Riddle. And that's when he decided to donate the building himself to Yesteryear Village, and went straight to the committee and the board of directors there at the South Florida Fair to get it put in there. And John actually served as the chairman on that committee. So some professionals came in and were like, hey, this is going to cost like $50,000 to relocate it. And John was not about that. So he actually found 60 volunteers to help him. So August 12th and August 13th of 1995, the house was completely dismantled and moved to the village. The roof and the attic were like split in two, and as were like the first and second floor. So it was kind of like in 4 parts, I imagine. And then it was reassembled in Yesteryear Village, and a historical grant actually came through for the house, and it was able to be restored back to its original appearance in 1920. So, some of the hauntings that go on there, this house is, in my opinion, extremely haunted, and I would probably only go there during the day. But nighttime sounds so horrifically scary. But I will let you guys be the judge of that with some of these stories that I have. So, everyone in West Palm Beach knows the story of the Riddle House, from it, where it was a 20th century, estate and funeral parlor, mortuary, and it is rumored that all the ghosts of the past from everything that happened inside of that house and outside actually remain with this house. One of the big hauntings of the house is a spirit named Joseph. He was one of John Riddle's employees, and he actually committed suicide by hanging himself in the attic because it was during the Great Depression and he had just massive financial troubles. And the house itself is said to have a very ominous feeling about it. And they also report another spirit. His name is Buck. He was a worker at the cemetery that was across the street when it was in its original spot. And it said that he got in a fight with a visitor, and Buck was killed during the fight on the cemetery grounds. And shortly after that, different workers and even locals were saying, I think we're seeing Buck, and they will see him walk the grounds, continue like he's still working and upkeeping and taking care of the cemetery. So that's more of a residual haunt. He's still there, he's still doing his work and everything like that. So then once Carl Riddle moved his family into the building in the 1920s, he changed it up and it became a residence, but still had a role of overseeing the cemetery. Riddle talks about a lot of strange happenings after he moved into the house. He kept a diary and noted a lot of what was going on. So, a lot of strange noises. He said he encountered supernatural incidents, and his whole family was beginning to experience these. Again, strange noises, footsteps, dragging chains in the middle of the night, and he said he could hear them going up and down the stairs all night, and also seeing apparitions. And like I mentioned earlier, because it was the onset of the Depression, that's when a huge tragedy struck the household. So again, this is about Joseph. He was a cemetery worker, again in financial debt, and one day it was just too much. And he made his way up to the attic and he hung himself from the rafters. It is said that he climbed up on a ladder and then kicked the ladder out from underneath. I apologize. I didn't say like trigger warning or anything like that. But this is what happened in the historical records of it, and I apologize, guys. So, and then about a month after he died, the beam that he hung himself on caught fire, and nothing else in the house did, just the beam. And there is a Ghost Adventures on this house, and I will talk about it, but you can see like they're in the attic and they put the camera up towards the beam and it's literally just charred in one spot. And it's an all wood house. It would have easily burnt down. So it's pretty crazy. So his ghost is the most famous in that house, and people again see shadowy apparitions, very eerie whispers and like mumbling from empty rooms. And now the Riddle House is known for its haunting reputation, and a lot of workers struggle there and they will just quit out of nowhere. So as more and more of these hauntings are going on, workers are leaving. They had a really hard time maintaining their employees. A lot of them reported hearing and seeing strange things. They were extremely frightened and again just would up and quit out of nowhere. They also reported the dragging of the chains along the floor. They would see apparitions in the shadows and corners and murmuring voices. And, with all of them seeing this, not just Mr. Riddle and his family, it gave that house a very large haunted reputation. So Carl, moved out of the house, and several businesses actually tried to take over the property. Several businesses. And none of them lasted because, again, they were reporting a lot of supernatural going-ons similar to what the Riddles explained that they were dealing with. So then again in 1995, the house was moved to the fairgrounds. And though it's in a brand new place, the paranormal activity didn't stop. It actually became a lot worse. So the workers trying to rebuild this house started reporting different things. So they actually had tools being thrown at them. They would have ladders knocked over and windows shattering for no reason. And the construction crew just could not handle these. And people really believed that these spirits were still inhabiting this house, even though it had moved, but that they were angry about its relocation. So the Riddle House is one of Florida's most popular spots for paranormal activity and investigations, and, more goings on from visitors saying they see mysterious flashes of light and sightings of a hanging torso in the attic window. No thanks. And they actually offer a ton of different ghost tours, and I guess they do let private investigators go in. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I have seen that. This house has just taken over the paranormal world and believers and investigators. This house was featured on Ghost Adventures in 2008, and that sparked even more tourism and ghost hunting and investigating. And it's just massively known as this haunted place because throughout the history you see a lot of changing owners because of different mysterious deaths on the property. Very crazy. So it said these spirits refuse to leave. They are so attached to this place, many people have tried to talk to them about leaving, going to the other side, and they refuse. This is their home. They will haunt it forever. And I also think, it was haunted at the original spot. Then they take it to Yesteryear Village, where there's a ton of different places in their original form. Like, there's probably ghosts from other houses that come and hang out in there now that, they're all on the same property together. So once the house was rebuilt, they had an open invitation, ceremony about it being built and, welcome to the village type of thing. And during the event, a ton of guests saw this couple walking around in Victorian clothing. And they had all these pictures of the house from way back when, and they were going to unveil it at some point. They just hadn't done it yet. It was the beginning of the ceremony, people just walking around. And some of the workers saw them too and were like, oh man, it'd be really cool when we unveil the picture to have them with it. And they couldn't find them anymore. They were just gone. And no one had seen them. No one knew where they went. And so they're at the ceremony. They unveil the pictures. And one of the pictures is the exact couple and the exact items that they're wearing. It was just, that sounds so creepy. Just to be like, no. I literally just saw those people. And they saw them perfectly. It's crazy. Okay. So here is a little story from a ghost hunter. His name is Will G. He says, quote, "I've been attacked by ghosts before." And he goes on to say, quote, "The thing you always have to remember is that they can hurt you sometimes. That's one reason why I don't encourage the layperson to mess with them," he laughs. People get this idea in their head that they can grab up some digital gear and go ghost hunting, and that nothing bad could possibly happen to them. Well, let me tell you, my encounter with the ghost man named Joseph alone is enough to prove that idea wrong. Will continues, quote, "We, that is me and my little crew of experts, set up in the Riddle House one evening about 3 years ago. We did all the usual stuff, took all the usual precautions, and we were there to have a good time, communicate with some folks, but about halfway through, it started to look like we weren't going to make any contact that night. All the dead folks were silent, Okay. When all of a sudden, and I mean out of freaking nowhere, man, this guy, Joseph, comes screaming from literally out of the woodwork. I could see through him, but he grabbed me just the same. I felt his hands around my throat as he screamed in my face to get out of here. I can tell you we left right that minute. Then he was asked, would you go back? And he said, maybe, he says, but not without a priest. Which is crazy. They didn't get anything the whole night except for Joseph coming out of nowhere. And like you'll see in the other stories, this ghost has to have so much energy from around them to, literally be able to put their hands on them. It's just crazy. Joseph's a very crazy ghost. And it makes me laugh because I love the show Ghosted right now. Whoops. And so it just makes me laugh. Some of them can do different things and you should watch it. It's just a very cute show. Anyways, so another man, his name is Steve Carr. He was a carpenter for the reconstructions of the house, and he says that he'll never go in again. He witnessed a lid from an iron pot. So in my head, I'm thinking oh, it's just a lid. But I have Le Creuset items, and I have some very old cast iron, and those lids are so heavy. And so seeing a lid from an iron pot, it flies up and flew horizontally and hit him in the head. So he's unconscious, and his coworker actually saw the whole thing. So he dragged him out of that house literally as fast as he could. There's reports of a 2x4 flying and hitting people, hitting the workers. They will feel fingers in their hair, flashes of light that go past them. They've seen in the attic window a torso and a head hanging from the ceiling. They actually had to halt construction for 6 months to find a new crew that was willing to come in. That's crazy. And then there was a former security guard. His name was Barry. He noticed a lot of lights on and off at night. He would see things walking past the windows, tons of noises. He would be grabbed and his hair played with. And crews would just come to him and say that they keep having these heavy supernatural encounters where tools are thrown. If they left tools in the attic, they would all be thrown down the stairs. Like I said earlier, windows would shatter, ladders would be moved, knocked over, or go missing. And a lot of that, they believe, has to be with Joseph because of his experience with the ladder. They also notice orbs, temperature changes. The ambient temperature in Florida is in the 80s. Sometimes, I know. But when they all of a sudden get into a cold spot and they put a thermometer or a thermal camera on there, the spot's around 50s or 60s degrees. Ugh. So, they claim there's a man in the attic, the furniture moves, they hear 1920s music, they hear children playing in the bedroom. There's a child's bedroom, which I don't know why there's a child's bedroom, because, it was last used for the college and not for But they did want to restore it back to how Carl Riddle had it, so they must have made a kid's bedroom in there for him. But they feel in that room that it's very angry, a very dangerous room, and that there's always someone staring at them. And if they do hear voices, they're either children's voices or very, very angry voices. They report a woman getting ready for bed in one of the upstairs bedrooms. In the kitchen, there's an apparition of a woman. She likes to slam things, bang on dishes, and throw things. And when you try to approach her or she approaches you, she will completely disappear. These ghosts are legit if they can continue to throw things. But that's what makes this house so dangerous too, because people are getting lids and wood and dishes and everything thrown at them. It's not just residual, it's a very extremely intelligent one that can muster up enough energy to be able to pick something up and throw it. Like, that is freaking scary, guys. So they also say that like the ghosts will be everywhere you go, the ghost will be in a different place. So if you're outside looking inside, you'll see the ghosts in the windows. But then if you go inside and you're looking outside, you'll see them walking the grounds. And the most famous one there is a woman in a white dress with a white dog just always walking around the grounds. So it's hard to say if she belongs to the Riddle House or if she is a part of another place in the village. They also still see Buck, the cemetery groundskeeper, when it was at its original place. They see him wandering the grounds. He will sit on the porch because they said that's where they would sit and have lunch, and see him working outside. So I believe he's a residual haunt that just got very stuck to the house and just still makes sure everything is good. Still makes sure everything is good. My mouth today. There's another investigator. His name was Gary Busa. He witnessed a flag getting torn down. For some reason, if it's Joseph or whoever else, they hate flags. They will disappear. They'll get torn. They'll get, tossed, pushed over, stuff like that. He also witnessed doors opening, a ton of noises, and a lot of the people that he was with just completely refused to come into the house. They can just feel it, And Gary also witnessed a solid head and a torso in a black suit with a noose around his neck and it hanging attached to the beam. So he's like a full apparition in an actual suit hanging from the beam, and he will just stare at you. Inside or outside, I think it was more outside through the attic window, but like, oh my God, can you imagine looking up and seeing like the body hanging and his eyes are wide open, staring at you? Like, ooh, I got the chills. That like hits your core, man. No. The workers that currently work there today for Yesteryear Village, they will always say hi and bye to the house to let them know they're coming in and then to hopefully make sure that nothing follows them out. And they keep the attic padlocked to keep people out because that's where Joseph is seen the most and he hates men. So they do it to keep the people safe. But people still throw a fit. They want to see inside. Oh my gosh. Are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need to get out? You okay? My poor baby and his cone. You're okay. I have to move over for his cone. Anyways, but yeah, people still throw a fit about it because they want to go in and take pictures and they want to, why aren't you letting us go in there? Like, guys, there's so many reports of such bad hauntings, and they're just doing it to keep you safe. Ghosts are throwing things. So they actually had to go in, take pictures, and then post them on the door so that people could see what the inside looked like, because they do not allow people to go in there anymore. Though people are dumb. So I'm going to dive into the Ghost Adventures episode. It is creepy. I really enjoyed it. It was not dull or lame at all. There was a lot going on in this episode, and I just found it pretty badass. And, Zachy, baby, you did so good. I'm so stupid. But this was back in 2008. I'm pretty sure it was like, do I have it? Oh, season 1, episode 4. So it was very early on, but it was really good. So, he always talks to people at the beginning. He talked to some employees. They say that every time they go in there, they just feel something so angry. So angry. And another story was that, like, right across from the Riddle House is a World War II, like, outpost building or like a general store. And that, like, the ghosts inside of those compete with each other. Because, like, one morning they'll go into the World War II place and they'll have glass broken and things knocked over. And, they check all of these every morning. And then the next day, the same would happen to the Riddle House. Broken glass, things thrown everywhere. Like, it's like either the ghosts are competing against each other or something. But very weird. They also say there's always a light on in the window and something walking past it. And they hear a lot of noises, and that each room in the place has a very distinct different feeling to them, but it always seems like someone is watching you through wherever you go in the house. So Zach brought on a psychic medium, which he's done it a couple times. This was season 1, so he was like, I don't usually do it. I'm just kicking everything. You can go lay up there. There you go, jump. No, he's scared of his cone. Jump. You can do it. Nope. Okay. So, yeah, he doesn't use them very often, but I'm kind of glad he used it for this. I thought she was very, very good and very accurate, because she said that she had no knowledge of the house. I don't know if she grew up in West Palm Beach or something, but yeah, she just really didn't have an idea about the house. So they go in and she's instantly like uncomfortable, overwhelmed. She feels the anger. She's like, oh my gosh. And they're just standing in the kitchen, I think, and she senses a man named Joseph, and she says that he claims ownership of the house, that this is his house now, and that he is very, very mad that they moved the house. So the medium gets really drawn to the staircase, and she starts feeling this very scary, nervous energy. When they go upstairs, she's drawn to the kids' room, but she says she just doesn't like this room. It's her least favorite room. There's just so much sadness and anger in this room. Just, oh my God. So they go in the room, and Zach is scared of dolls, if you didn't know that. And so he's picking out all the really crazy dolls in there, but she's saying that she can hear a lot of yelling. There's a major argument going on in this room with 4 different men who were very prominent, important people in West Palm Beach. Not sure what happened there. They didn't go into detail about it, but very, very weird. So that's kind of why there's so much anger in that room, I believe. So they go up to the attic, and she's very overwhelmed. She can feel a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, but it's drawing her in because of this man up there, possibly Joseph. She says he likes to throw things, and he doesn't like that they're in the house. Does not like having them there. And I guess he reiterates to her that he hates men. And then she starts pointing at Aaron and says that he doesn't like you the most. Which, oh my God, if like some random woman, I'd be like, well, sorry guys, I'm not going tonight. But of course, they make Aaron sit up there by himself. And so, yeah, he doesn't like Aaron, and he's telling her that she's going to make their life living hell when they're investigating. She says that his favorite thing to do is to watch people from the window and scare them. So she said, just stay away from the window. It is a big window. So she's like, just stay away from it. You don't know if he can push you out the window or what can happen, but he's a very evil, evil man. Like, oh God. Oh God. That's so scary. So let's go into the lockdown. My Zachy baby, of course, comes in yelling, telling him he's here, provocating them, and he actually puts a 2x4 piece of wood on the stairs. And as he does it, he just feels this massive cold spot on the stairs. Just massive. So they cut to them kind of going crazy because they start saying, we haven't even started yet. And the front door where they came in, they first described it as it's slammed, but it's padlocked, to keep them in there, that they always do for dramatic reasons. And they can hear it and see it shaking, like someone is trying to get into that door, and it's padlocked, so it's like literally shaking. No. So they didn't get it on camera because they just hadn't even started yet. Zach said, hey, we're here, probably turned off the cameras to finish what they were doing. My dog's so distraught right now. Here, I'll scoot over. There you go. He has to be underneath me. Okay. So they're down like in the foyer, and they can hear footsteps above them, which they realize is the child's room above them. They get an EMF going. They start asking questions while they're downstairs, and all of a sudden you hear this like weird clatter. Well, it was the 2x4. It had been pushed or something down the steps, and like it's not like he laid it to where it was like on edge, he could tip it over. Like he sat it down like firmly in a spot, so it had to have been like pushed by something. So he's going up on the stairs asking different questions and goes super cold instantly. So they're on the stairs, and then it's like one thing after another there, guys. It was really cool to watch, but all of a sudden the American flag behind them in the funeral parlor room falls over. And just freaking scary because they go over there, huge cold spot, and the flag, it's on a pole, and it was like leaned up against the wall in the corner. So it's not like it was, I don't know, it's not like it could fall over easily. They're trying to debunk it, and it's like, no, someone literally has to like push this over. So very weird, and it, goes back to the understanding that they don't like flags, which is weird. They also start hearing women's voices, like moanings, or it's just not, you can't hear them correctly. So they start asking questions, and the voice actually calls them cowards. A very evil, evil sounding voice. Just blah. And now they're hearing footsteps in the attic, and another cold spot appears, and Aaron's got the thermometer, and it's like 80 degrees, 85 degrees outside. Like it was hot, and they all of a sudden are in like a 68 degree spot. Like that's a huge temperature change. And the cold spots just kept happening all night long. So, of course, they go to the attic. They start asking about Joseph, and Zach doesn't feel right up there. Feels sick, disoriented. And so he starts, of course, yelling at the spirits about knocking the board over, saying, were you trying to throw it at me? And it's not nice to be pulling people's hair, just really calling him out on all the mean things that he's doing. And then, of course, my Zachy baby just yells, quote, "You're not gonna scare us away." It's my man. And then they leave Aaron by himself in the attic. But I think Aaron did really well. He has EVP going and he's being very kind and calm. He tells them he doesn't want to be harmed, but he's sitting there. He's like, "I'm shivering. It's so cold right now." And he had like his back to the window and a ton of stuff behind him. And it was really bothering him. So he heard like a little noise. He was like, okay. So then he starts to ramp it up a little bit. And he regretted saying this, but he called Joseph a coward for hanging himself. And after that, he starts not feeling good. And he is looking all over, looking behind him. And he hears voices and noises. And then all of a sudden, there's just like a huge clatter. Me hitting my desk. A huge clatter. And he's just instantly up running away. He's screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," and runs out of the room. So at the same time that Aaron is doing his investigation, Nick and Zach are downstairs doing an EVP in the funeral parlor room because furniture has been known to move in there, and then someone saw an apparition of a man sitting in one of the chairs. So they're sitting asking questions, and all of a sudden they hear a huge, banging, so stupid, in the kitchen, very loud, and they ran in there. They cannot figure out where it came from. It sounds like something, they threw something. They couldn't figure out what they threw, and there was a lot of stuff in there because that was like their base camp where their computers and everything were, and so they start asking questions and they leave a camera in there. So they go back, they're heading back to the funeral parlor room, and Nick swears he saw something and heard something on the stairs. And then there's a camera on the coat rack, and the umbrella, it's not like tied together tight, but you can see like the umbrella moving around. And they're like locked in. There's no windows open. It shouldn't be moving. And Nick just has this terrible dread feeling going around in him, saying that something is on the stairs. They finally make it back to the funeral parlor room and sit back down and are asking, can you make a noise? And then at that same time is when something gets knocked over in the attic with Aaron. Nick and Zach heard the sound, and then start hearing Aaron screaming. It's not a big house, so like he's screaming at the top of his lungs. They run up, and as they're going up, they hear something on the stairs. They're so scared. Like, everyone's scared, but like Aaron is at his worst. He's so scared. His whole body is shaking. And so when they're up there, they tell Aaron about the kitchen. And he was like, "Yeah, I heard that too." And they go back and review all of the footage, and they find that a bird cage is what fell in the attic. It was like on top of a chest or a box or something, but it's like it was sitting normally, not like you had to touch it to tip it over. And it was super loud. And so then the camera in the kitchen is also picking up different thumps, loud thumps around the kitchen or somewhere downstairs, and they caught 2 of them. And then in the kids' room, there was an EVP of a female child playing with a toy. Like you could hear her voice and then something like in the background type of thing. It was kind of weird. So that kind of concludes their episode. But they believe that these spirits are bound to this house forever. Like Joseph will never leave. Buck will always be there, tending to the grounds and everything like that. But it was very freaky, and I highly recommend you guys go watch it. Again, it's season 1, episode 4. Yeah, but that is it for episode 28, the Riddle House and Yesteryear Village in West Palm Beach, Florida. I hope you guys like it. Again, please go on and follow me on all social media platforms. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere where you get your podcast, if you guys could please rate and review, it means so much to me, and it does help grow the podcast. I appreciate everyone that listens, and definitely tell your friends. So next week we are going to be heading to South Dakota. Very cold in South Dakota right now. And we are going to be exploring a lot of mythical creatures and legends surrounding different parts of South Dakota. It's going to be really cool. They have a lot of crazy ones, so I'm very excited for that one. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening and all of your support. And I will see you guys next week. Have an amazing week. Bye.